In this video, we're going to look at how JavaScript can use code to make decisions. And this is going to focus primarily on the if statement and the switch. Now remember, all coding languages can be broken down into basically 5 main concepts: creating output, using variables, control structures, loops, and functions. So we're going to focus on that third concept, control structures, using JavaScript with if statements and the switch to allow our code to make decisions. Now, what that might look like practically is think of a login process, for example. When you go to a login form, you fill out a username and a password. When you click submit, there is code that will take the provided username and password, compare that against a list of users from a database, and if the username and password matches one of those records, then the code will let you in. If there is no match, then the web page will display an error message and allow you to retry. So notice that key word there. If there is a match, continue with the login process. If there is no match, display an error message and retry. So let's code an example. So I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call this password.html. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the front end portion of a password process. Now we don't have a database of users in this example, so we're just going to look at the contents of the form element and compare it against a sample password. Now don't ever use this in an actual live situation. Here we're just looking at illustrating the concept of an if statement. So I'm just going to start by filling out our main tags. And we'll throw in a title here. Right, and a form element. And I'm just going to use text so we can actually see our password, even though we should use a password type. I'm going to give it an ID also of password, and a submit button. Or I guess just any button will do. We don't need a submit button. Alright, so I'll save this and I'm going to open up what we have so far. So if I open up our password.html file, we just have a text box with text that I can see and a button. So at this point, it won't do anything. So I've given my text box an ID. I'm also going to give my button an ID. That way I can use JavaScript to interact with these two elements. I'm going to create 2 variables. I'm just going to use the same names. So I'm going to create a variable called password and create a reference using the ID of password. And I'm going to create a second variable, I'll call it button, and I'm going to create a reference to our button. Right now we want to react to when our visitor clicks that button. So I'm going to take my button variable and add an event listener, and specifically a click. And when a click happens, we are going to run this function. When the function is executed after a click, we want to check the contents of that text box. So if password, which is the reference to our text box, and our password will be 1234. If the password matches 1234, let's just do a console.log password matches. And when you're writing an if statement, you can have more than one possible outcome. So when writing an if statement, you start with the phrase if. When writing an if statement, you start with if, then inside your brackets are your condition. So here is what is the condition that is required to execute the block of code in these two brackets. So in this case, if the value of our password text box is 1234, then console.log a message. Now also with an if statement, you can have an alternative block of code executed. And to do that, I just add else. Then I define the second block of code. So I'll just console.log incorrect password. And I will save. And now let's refresh, open up my developer tools to my console tab. All right, and I just have an error here, get element. There's an S where I don't need an S. So just save and refresh. Okay, and if I pass in 1234 and click check, we get password matched. If I enter anything else and click check, we get incorrect password. So that is the basic structure of an if statement. Just on a side note, when you are writing your conditions, 2 equal signs is comparing. So notice we use 1 equal sign here. 1 equal sign is for assigning. 2 equal signs is for comparing. Now we have an if statement and we have an else. So we have a block of code to run if the condition is true and a block of code to run if the condition is false. However, you can add a second condition. So if I say else if password.value equals 4321, then we can console.log another message. And now if I save and refresh, if I put in my second password, 4321, and click check, we get our second password match. So with an if statement, you can have more than one condition and more than one possible outcome. Now, in our example, we have 3. And with an if statement, only one of those will ever be executed. So there is no way that both this block of code and this block of code could be executed. It's going to be the first one, the second one, or in this case, the third one. All right, now let's try something else. Let's say we just want to display a message based on the day of the week. So just put in my main tags here, throw in a title. And fix my tabbing. All right, and open up my script tag, and let's just have JavaScript display a greeting based on the day of the week. So we'll just say, have a good day. Except on Mondays, we will use the greeting, do you have a case of the Mondays? So first, I'm going to create a variable called now. and we need to get the day of the week. So to get the day of the week, I'm going to create a second variable called day and set it equal to our now variable dot get day. So here we've defined a variable called now. This is a date variable. Now, if we don't specify which date to place in that variable when creating a date variable, it's going to assume we're talking about right now. Then we create a second variable called day, and we take our now variable, and date objects have a series of methods where we can pull out individual pieces of the date. So for example, now.getDay will give us the day of the week. And let's just display using document.write what we just retrieved. So the current day is and I'll save that, and let's open up that file. All right, and the current day is 4. Now I'm coding this on a Thursday, so in JavaScript terms, Thursday is considered 4. This is one thing you will have to get used to if you're just learning code, is that code often starts at 0. So Sunday is 0, Monday is 1, Tuesday is 2, Wednesday is 3, and Thursday is 4. Now, just to make this work, Alright, so let's write an if statement, and I can say if day equals 4, alright, and then let's write our greeting. So I'm going to say if day equals 0, we will document.write our Monday message. And then the alternative, else just our standard greeting. And now if I save and refresh, oh, I just have a typo here, misspelled document. And now refresh, and there's my greeting. Now let's say I want to test this out. There's a couple ways to do this. First of all, JavaScript is pulling the date from my computer, so I could just change the clock on my computer. Second, here we are fetching the current day and putting it in the variable called day. So what I will do is temporarily take my day variable and set it to 1, which is Monday. And then refresh. All right, and that should display my message, but as I was coding, I put in Sunday here. So switch that to Monday. And now refresh, and there's our Monday message. So I can use this temporary variable to check any day of the week and see if my code is reacting properly. And then when I'm happy with it and done, I can take that out. Now there is one other type of control structure. It's called a switch. And the way a switch works is I add the switch command and I place in the brackets the variable that I am checking. So in this case, our day variable. Now a switch is basically a very specific type of if statement. When you're writing an if statement that has one piece of criteria and a series of possible values, then you can use a switch instead. So for example, let's duplicate that previous if statement with a switch. So I am comparing the day variable, and then for each possible value, I create a case. I write my possible case value. Then I write my result. So in this case, document.write my Monday greeting. And then at the end of my result, I add break. Then I can add my next case. Now in this example, we don't have any more cases. If we had greeting messages for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so on, I could add those in. But similar to an else part of my if statement, I can write default. And this is kind of like a catch-all. And I don't need a break at the end there because this is the end of the switch anyway, but it doesn't hurt. And now if I refresh, there's my greeting from my if statement followed by the greeting from my switch. Now let's say I wanted to add a specific message for the weekend. So the weekend is 0 for Sunday and 6 for Saturday. With an if statement, I'm going to add an else if day equals Sunday or day equals Saturday. So when I'm creating a condition, often I will have more than one piece of criteria, like in this example. And to connect more than one piece of criteria or two conditions, I use an or, which is 2 bars, or an and, which is 2 ampersands. And then I can add my result. Likewise, with a switch, I can add a case in for Sunday. And now I want to add in Saturday. Now, as far as I know, you cannot add an additional condition like that or that in a case. And the way a case works is if this case is true, basically we're saying if day equals 0, then run this code until you hit a break. So if I left this break out by accident or on purpose, this would actually execute this line of code and still execute this one. So the way I can utilize that to apply this message to both Saturday and Sunday is add a second case for 6. And again, here it's Thursday, and I'm not going to wait until Saturday to test this, so I'm going to take my day variable and set it to Sunday and save. Refresh my code, and I get my weekend message for Sunday, and let's try Saturday. Refresh, and I still get my weekend message. So I'm happy with that. I can take out my temporary variable there, and we're all good.